too. So yeah. So hi,
Excellent.
Deborah, welcome. We won't put the pressure on you, but we're glad you're here. And as I said, people will come in as they see what time it is and can join us. And we do this living our values conversation once a month on the 11th of every month at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And I'm Amy Johnson. I'm a values and idea integrator, which means that I work with individuals, groups, companies, even high schoolers about identifying core values and then really learning how to integrate them and live them in your life, business, and in all areas really of life. And we do this, Sheila and I work together and we facilitate workshops. And we do this as an opportunity to talk about what it really means to live our values, because it's not something that's talked about. Often values are considered something that you have to know what they are. And it's on a lot of lists of things that you're supposed to do about yourself. But then beyond that, they just sit there as opposed to actually be activated and lived. So we take it a step further here in a fun, adventurous way. We like to say it's an adventure.
Oh, absolutely. It is. It is. And it's just every month is different, and every month is both a review and a discovery. So there's always something new. There's always some nuanced aspect to it. There's always some new way to integrate and connect with the values for me in a deeper way. And so that's what makes this really exciting, just to join every time and like just be surprised. It's like, yes, to reaffirm, to remember, to like practice. And it is a practice. It's a practice. It's an intention. It's a mindset. It's something that doesn't come necessarily naturally, like you said, to think about your values in the context of how you live your life. But when my experience of it has been that when I do, it makes such a huge difference. And so I'm so committed to being on this path of really like anchoring in my values and having them be in my consciousness, because they guide me in such beautiful ways and they are always helpful
Yeah,
and reaffirming. Yeah. So
absolutely. Well said. Yay. Glad you're here. And up to your point of kind of remembering what we're talking about or reconnecting to things that we know, we'll start by saying what core values are and how we define it in this work, because it's probably somewhat familiar and somewhat different than is out there in the world. So I define core values as single words or short phrases that really connect you to your authentic and most genuine self. They are a bridge between that self and then how you relate to everything outside of you, relationships, work, day to day, the person at the post office, to anything and media you consume. So across the board, how you relate to the world is shown up in your values, because our values, whether or not we're aware of them, every day we're making decisions based on our values, how we spend our time and our resources, what we choose to eat or not, or how we get dressed in the morning, all of those kinds of things. So um, the values are a way to be clear about who we are and then express that in the world. And so that's what we like to do, is kind of talk about it from that perspective. So it's really looking at both sides of it. And in this conversation, we like to pick topics that are interesting to look at through the lens of the values that aren't typically thought of in that way. So today we're talking about self-care, and how does that align with your values? How do you even think about what self-care is, and how do the values inform that in a different way than maybe we're used to thinking about? So anything else, Sheila, before I
That's great. That's absolutely great. And we had the topic last month of self-care, and I found it to be so timely. So when is self-care not timely, right? It's always up for me. It's always a good thing to refocus on. So I love looking at my self-care practices and what it means, what it really
right.
means to take care of myself and to honor myself through the lens of my core values. So I'm excited to be here to share and
Yes.
talk about it.
Yeah, and I think what we were talking about month too, was,
Yeah, it seems like last week, right?
I know, right? So self-care is how we care for ourselves in these different areas as well, right? Emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. And we all need different things. I think that's what's really important. It's almost a buzzword now too. Self-care can be talked about like, go get your manicure, which is nothing wrong about that, to massage, to eating healthfully, to taking a nap, right? It's across the board. And all of those things do affect how we care for ourselves. What's interesting and why the values are so key is that each of us needs our own blueprint to self-care. There isn't one right way to self-care. And what might work for me may not work for somebody else. And what
Mhm.
might work for me one month may not work for me another month.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think there's an interesting approach to thinking about it in that way. There isn't just one way to practice self-care.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the values, because we each have our own individualized set, enables us to define what that looks like and be able to really give our own blueprint for how we can care for ourselves
Mhm.
and then change it up accordingly to
Mhm.
match that. One of the things is that we when I talk about a set of core values, it's 5 to 7 core values. That's what we found is the sweet spot. Usually less than 5, it seems that you're missing an area in your life that could be supported by a value. And more than 7 tends to be overwhelming. There's usually overlap. And
Mhm.
it is
Mhm.
about picking one that is more dominant than another, or more
Mhm.
resonant, not dominant, but more resonant than another.
Mhm.
So it's really just a different way of looking at our lives and how we put ourselves out there. And that to that end, there's both inner work and outer work in values work. Right? The self-care is about looking inward and how to care for ourselves so that we are better and more full to be available to the outside world.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Well stated.
that is a helpful way to think about it. Deborah, do you have any questions as we continue? No? Okay. Well, well, one of the things I did last week, and I'll put it in the chat again, is I created a document. We were going to look at that again about the values and how to identify your self-care tools based on your values.
Mhm.
So let me get that and I'll stick that in the chat. And Sheila, did you think about your core values last month in terms of self-care?
Oh my God, absolutely. I've been thinking about it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I'll show you how it's showing up for me right now. I've got a lot of things going on. I'm working on a couple of different projects. I just started a few new things in my life. And so my life is suddenly busier in a different way. And so like my time is like even more
Mm,
mm, precious because there's less of it. There's less time for flexible kinds of things. And so I have been really looking at, if I look at my calendar and think about all the things that are in front of me, like, okay, like today or this week or this month, what needs to get done and what I'm committed to doing, it can look pretty overwhelming. So for me, right now, it's about being in the moment. So it's around just practicing that presence and being in the moment versus getting ahead of myself. So this is a constant reminder for me right now. It's I can look at the day and then just kind of like step back and say, okay, you have plenty of time today. There's plenty of time for everything. Everything's gonna happen in its own time. But right now, this is what I get to do. And so instead of like, projecting out, which is like the tendency because there's so much going on, and I know that, or kind of envisioning, oh, I'm going to be tired by 10 o'clock tonight. Now, instead of thinking about that, it's just like really staying in the moment. It's my value of presence and being in the moment that is really leading me to like stay there. It's like, okay, this is
right.
the practice. This is the practice right now. You talk about it. Here's the practice. Do it. Just stay here now. Just be in this moment. Do this thing now, and then go on to the next thing when it's time.
Right. And it's
So
like
that's been
minutes.
tremendously helpful for my sanity, for my sense of not getting overwhelmed, for still feeling some calm, and just reminding myself consistently, just like, okay, what's in front of you right now?
Right.
And so
Right. Yeah.
yes, it's been really active for me
And your
lately.
value is presence, right? That is
Yes,
value that
yes.
is activated to help you.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's beautifully stated. And yesterday was World Mental Health Day. I don't know if you.
Yeah, that's right. I did see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking about is how our values, and this ties into self-care too, which is how our values help us with our mental health. And
Yeah.
that's a perfect example of it, because when we're in anxiety or overwhelm or worry, it can amplify and build on each other, where when we have a set of reliable tools like the values, they can come back, help us come back to ourselves in any
Yes,
moment.
yes, yes. It is coming home. It's coming home. The values are so
Right.
personal and they're so connected. And we've talked about this in a number of workshops, how, my I believe that you come in with these, the ones that are going to be amplified for you, they're already present, right?
Right.
Figuring out what they are. It's like you know them as a child, you don't think about them consciously, but then naming them, and that's part of the process that we take you through, is naming them really helps to anchor those things in that are already a part of you, right? So when you own it and you know that, oh, these are the ones that I'm supposed to live my life, they're different for other people, and they
Right.
may include some of the exact same values,
Right.
right? There's all these ones that go underneath each category, right? As you're naming those 5 to 7. But it's like, yes, they bring you back home. They bring you back to
Right.
yourself. It's a return to like, oh, okay, this is
Yeah.
what I'm supposed to be doing. This is how I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm about, and this is what I'm going to focus on. So
Right.
it's super
Exactly.
powerful for that.
Yeah, they're super powerful for that, and they're a tool that will help in any situation that you're in, right? That's why they're single words or short phrases.
Yes.
You don't have to do a lot of digging in a moment. Or I don't like to use the word figuring out in my vocabulary anymore, because that was a rabbit hole that I got into too often. So
Oh,
my
oh,
recovery is
that's
not that
okay.
approach. That's
Right.
not for everyone. I'm a digger and a figure outable person. So releasing myself from that and turning
That's
to where it's
good. I
important.
like it.
So for me, having a single word or a short phrase that I feel like, oh, right, connection. And what in that moment connects me to myself, to the person in front of me, to sitting here in front of you all in this moment. So connection is part of my presence. And that's about being present in the moment too. And that's the word that helps me do that. Connect. Because I have a tendency to kind of be like a little bit in my imagination or fantasy, or a little up here, airy. I'm an air sign. I'm a Gemini. So I tend to be a little bit like, okay.
Uh,
I tend to disassociate, is I guess the best way.
oh,
And
oh.
so connection helps me not do that and be really grounded and present in different aspects, whether with what we're doing. And I think the other thing with the mental health day yesterday that I thought about was that I work with a lot of young people, high schoolers, even people just out of college, and mental health comes up in their values pretty consistently. It was almost the number one value amongst students in a high school class, grade level, like of 100 students. It was physical and mental health. So what I ask my students is to ask them how they relate to their mental health, which ties to the self-care, right? How
Mhm,
is mental
mhm,
health can be a value, but go one step further. How is it that you take care of your mental health? How is it that you find what you're looking for when you're in your healthy mind, body, and spirit and
mhm.
emotional space? And it's been so humbling to have these conversations with these young people, because these are 17 and 18-year-olds. And I want to share with you some of the values that came up
Mhm,
through
mhm.
this process, because they get to name their own. So one is self-peace, right? And that speaks directly to mental health. Authenticity, hand in hand, which is about supporting oneself as well as others, right? Harmony, and what was, I think there was another one, self-love. And those were ways that when the students defined what that meant for them, it was very individualized. They were super clear that this was how they would take care of their mental health. Obviously, it's not a replacement for outside help or therapy or medication if necessary. And these are tools that, as Sheila was talking about, can be used at any time in the moment to know themselves. And then when as they're applying to college or in college, they can take that with them to express themselves. So it's and the difference I see with the adults like Sheila and I, the ones who are another generation, is that mental health is woven into our core values, but it's not identified as like, this is about mental health. People our ages aren't actually talking about it in the same way, I have found. Like connection, like all my values point to helping me with my mental health, whereas the younger generation is far more zoned in and tuned in to addressing it directly.
Interesting.
Which I thought was an interesting observation from, because it's not that it's not there for the other generations, it's just not as defined. And they've grown up, the ones I'm talking to are, been through COVID in high school. So,
right. So the word really was right in front of the face.
Yeah. And there's far more conversation about it, more research about it, more acceptance about it. And so I think that's been powerful.
I think it's really powerful.
Yeah. And the other thing for self-care that I found, so one of my values is creativity and another is flourish. And both of those values have fun as part of it. So for me, a big thing in my self-care is to have fun. And how could that be interpreted? And sometimes that could be creative, where I like to take 10 minutes a day for sure to do something that's a kind of values-based self-care. And for the last 2 months, I was sketching every day for 10 minutes, which was my self-care activity. And that was based on my value of creativity and showing up for that. And I had different colored pens, and it was trying different tips, and I love drawing succulents. So that was really fun. And I wanted to change it up. So this month, my self-care action for 10 minutes a day is to smile for 10 minutes a day. I can sketch and smile for 10 minutes a day. I could meditate in a smile meditation for 10 minutes a day. And a friend of mine is doing a 30-minute smile meditation every day. And he looks different. It's amazing.
Yeah. Wow. That's very interesting.
So that gave me the idea, okay, if I am doing this, and I do yoga, I practice meditation every day and yoga. So I do other self-care things. This isn't my only thing, but I do a very specific one that is different than some of the routines that I do, that I call like baseline. Like I need those things to function. So just like I need sleep, and I need this too in that way. So if I'm doing the dishes, if I smile for 10 minutes, that works. So, and then I learned about laughter yoga. Have you ever heard of laughter yoga?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have not heard of that. So I learned something on laughter yoga. So I thought we could do it today if we wanted to learn some laughter.
Oh, that's
if we
cool.
were in the moment for it.
What I love about what you're doing too, Amy, is there's an intention. The intention is super important, because it is allowing you to, like, okay, so I've got these things in place, but how can I tweak it? You talk about that 1% difference,
Right.
just that little tiny thing that you can do that over time really adds up to something big, right? And when you like decide this month that you're going to focus on, like, okay, I'm doing the creativity thing, but let's amp it up a little bit. Let's change it up a little bit, right? Because that not only keeps you engaged and your brain engaged, but it also is something that is expansive, right? So it expands what you're already doing. So it kind of amplifies everything, right? You're doing these things, you're doing meditation, you're doing other kinds of things like yoga, and then you decide to put in, oh, I'm gonna do this smile meditation, right? I'm gonna smile practice, right? Which I love. I mean, I've been smiling ever since you said it. It's got this, it's great. It's such a great thing to do. And obviously there's a lot of studies. I mean, there's a physiological basis for that, right? So that actual movement, what it creates in your body, right? Your muscles, the endorphins, all the other things, just your mood is elevated. It's hard to stay in a place like in a funk if you're smiling. It's kind of impossible, right? It
Right.
just
Yes.
they can't coexist, right? So like to invite that in and to say, okay, this is really going to be a part of my everyday because it's fun. It's and it's good for me. It's like I love that. I absolutely love that.
Right. Yes. And thank you for reflecting that back. And what I think is interesting too is that it came from my values, right? Like it
Yeah.
came inside that through that lens. If I had just said to myself, oh, I need to do a smile meditation, it would have felt very different than going the other way, which is like, okay, looking at my values and go, okay, what story would they tell about what I need in terms of self-care?
Mhm.
It is so individualized. It's different by the times of year. This is a busier time of year, right? And I have felt that like taking 10 minutes to sketch every day has been hard to find that time some days. And I didn't want to feel like I was failing in my self-care. So how could I turn it up, tune it in, and win, really, right? Like
Yes, yes,
I
yes,
wanted
yes.
a win. I was doing self-care, but I didn't want to feel like I was failing self-care. That didn't
Right, because that creates its own problems,
that
right? And
creates
that's
the
not
own
very, yeah, that's not
critical,
taking good care of yourself, is to like be
right?
so harsh and like not, demanding and everything else. So it's like, yeah,
The critical
um,
self-parent.
uh,
So how could I both
yeah.
ease and I like to be efficient too, sometimes effectively efficient. So if I smile for 10 minutes intentionally on this Zoom, then perhaps that will count for my 10. So you guys can keep, okay, I'm gonna start now. It's 11:25.
Oh my gosh, I love, well, you actually have been already. And
Yeah, I
it's
think
like,
I've already done it,
oh
but I
my
need to
goodness,
now
yeah.
time it and see how it goes. I mean, feel free to join me if you want. We see what happens and how we feel afterwards. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know that it constantly elevates my mood. I love the laughter. Oh, that just reminds me, I was in the store the other day with my sister and oh, we're just carrying on the way we usually do and just having a good time and we're looking at shoes, right? So we're just going through this whole thing and kind of like finding these most outrageous shoes and saying, hey, this is your next pair, right? But we're just laughing and having a good time. And this woman is kind of passing and she says, you guys are having too much fun. And I thought, and I said, is that possible? Is there a limit? Is it possible to have too much fun? Kind of like, it's like, oh, okay. And it was meant kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I'm noticing, I'm acknowledging the two of you here having a good time. But there was like this other piece. It's like, wow, what does that mean? You have too much.
Right.
Is it possible to have too much fun? I don't think so. It's like, yeah, this is what life is about, right? So it's a slightly different orientation. It's just allowing yourself
Right.
the joy and the pleasure of simple things and just enjoying life and not taking things so seriously. And I feel so fortunate to have a partner in crime, with my sister, and our sense of humor is so similar because we went through so many experiences together, right? So we got this shorthand going and we respond to things, and it's just like super fun to like see the world and to see this resonance with her and just to like to have fun. And it's like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's good for my mental health. Heck
It
yeah.
is good for your mental
Heck
health.
yeah. I
Heck
want
yeah.
that. And heck yeah, there's no such thing as too much fun.
Yes. I don't think so either. But those are those phrases that we say that you're kind of like,
Right, 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 right. But
really? Like
think
kill two
about
birds
that.
with
It's like,
one
think
stone?
about it. It's like,
I
wait
don't
a
want to
minute.
kill a bird, like feed two birds with one
Oh,
worm.
oh, kill. Yeah, 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 yes. Oh my
And
God.
things
Yes.
that they come out of your mouth and you're like, what did I just say? That is
Right.
not what I want to. There's a consciousness around that,
But that's part of like living your values too. It's like being in
Right.
alignment, it's being authentic, it's being true to yourself means that you have to really examine sometimes the things that you grew up with or the ways that you speak to
Yes.
yourself or the things that you say internally to yourself. That's self-talk, right? It's habitual. It's like, and
Yeah.
this is an opportunity to catch it. Sometimes you don't even know because it's just going on in the background, right? But when you can like hear it, it's like, oh, 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 is that what I want to keep doing? Right? Then you have a choice, right?
Yeah.
Don't keep doing that.
And when we're children, that kind of outside outside comment could feel critical.
Oh, yeah, yeah, of
And I
course.
know I was
Yes.
talking to a friend who said that he was when he was in kindergarten, they called his parents because he was too enthusiastic. He was super excited about a song that they were going to sing, and the teacher thought he was too enthusiastic. So
Oh, wow.
so
Ah,
heartbreaking.
that just
So
breaks my heart. That's like, what a buzzkill. It's like,
we
like,
have
I
kind
went
of
through
trauma over
I went through the same thing in school actually.
really.
really?
I had my second grade teacher kept moving me around because I really just wanted to make friends with everybody, kept talking I guess during class a little bit too much, and because I wanted to make friends, she like put me in a corner.
Ah, that is just so tragic. It's so horrible. It's like, yeah, and then you start to think something's wrong with me, right? So what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Or you start to like pull back, right? Pull back.
Yeah.
And that joyful exuberance that kids have, of course it can be a lot, but it's so fantastic. It's so good to be able to hold on to
Yeah.
that, and to use that in life. And it's like, oh wow. Deborah, thanks for sharing that. But it's like, wow, yeah, and we do that to each other sometimes without even really knowing it, knowing the impact that it
Yeah.
has. And that's where being intentional really helps, to be aware when you have values. Because you talked to Amy too about, and I know that part of it is also how you treat people, right? How you
Right.
treat people is a reflection of your values.
Yes.
If you really want to have care and recognize that whether you like it or not, you have an impact on people. Your presence impacts people. And what kind of impact do you want to have? Your values speak directly to that kind of impact that you can have with others.
Right. It's true. And there, as a parent, I know that sometimes when my kids would get wild after dinner, and sometimes it would feel overwhelming to me. It could be both, I can acknowledge the joy and validate the experience, like the desire to connect with others, the desire to celebrate, the desire to play, and have to set a boundary like it's time for bed.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
You
No
know,
doubt. No doubt. You
so
got to have, yeah, boundaries are important.
boundaries are important too. But shaming someone, which is what unfortunately happens so often in school, and why this work at this phase, anytime in life, is so important to look at ourselves and go, okay, reclaim that. Like reclaim that inherent part of us, that desired connection, and being social is part of self-care. Sense of belonging is part of self-care too, right? Like how are we connected to each other? How are we connect, in terms of self-care, like there's what I say, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, physical health. I would say it could be social health, work
Oh,
health,
absolutely. All of that.
all of that too.
Mhm.
And so those can all be informed by how to take care of ourselves with our values, and pick up the phone and calling a friend could be an act of self-care.
Mhm.
Hi, Terry.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
good to see you.
Mhm.
And so self-care in that lens is so powerful to think about. Sheila, I wanted to ask you, we were talking about fun. Which of your values incorporates fun for you?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I think it's probably inviting beauty into every moment, because there's
Mm,
something that's really, yeah, just cherishing moments and being present for moments. Is there's presence, but there's also fun. There's so much joy. It's like this discovery. There's like curiosity. There's awe
right.
and wonder about life, right? So when I invite beauty, I'm inviting all of that, and I'm bringing life into the moment. And there's loads of fun.
Right?
Like the people that you meet and the conversations that you have and the places that you go and just like everything, the foods, I mean, all of it, it's like,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's perfectly divine how that works. And
yes.
because the values are the bridge for inner and outer, what I've noticed is that they can apply to our insides and to our outsides. So flourish is one of my values. So flourish is part of being fun and playful, and this smile exercise. I'm still in 8 minutes. I'm counting. I'm aware of the time. I have 2 more minutes.
I love it. I love it.
I'll see if I keep going longer. But the idea, like, that can be an internal exercise. And then flourish is then walking outside and, being seen and smiling to a stranger, or how I interact with the world. So it's smiling inwardly and outwardly in the terms of that, of flourish. And I think all of our values, in my experience, that's what makes them the bridge, go both ways. They're like, so some traditional values that could be considered more towards work or something, how would that look like internally? Like collaboration, what could that look like as an internal reflection, which would point to how would collaboration be part of core values? And then, or how to self-care, how would my value of collaboration be part of self-care? That seems a little bit odd. I think I talked about that last time a little bit. And then collaboration out in the world makes a different kind of sense. So it's kind of the flip side of, finding beauty in every moment, your inward look for that, as well as what that looks like outside.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Or
And
presence within yourself.
easy to find. Yes. It's like right there in front of me all the time. Yes, I love that. I love it. Love it, love
So
it.
it's using the lens to turn inward and the lens to kind of turn outward.
Right, right. I like that little, because it's a
I know, I just
like,
that little hand move.
right. The eye, right. It's just swiveling. I mean, because it is. It's like consciously observing the moment, but being in it at the same time. It's like yes, with full awareness. I love that.
Yes. And so speaking of like collaboration, it was a little harder to find. How would that look like? What would collaboration mean within me? And what I came to was this idea that all the different parts of me collaborating for my well-being, right? So it is being in harmony with the physical, mental, spiritual, creative, and the physical health, like that, collaborating in all those.
Yes.
In that way. I have many different parts of me. Maybe I'm a Gemini too, so I have twins. So I like a team. We have there's always at least 2 or 3 of us. So
right. And then you can think about that in terms of aspects and facets too, because there are, I mean, we're nuanced, right? The things that land with us today, we may be different from how it was a couple of years ago. I mean, we're constantly evolving, right? So there's like parts of yourself that need certain things, like, or want to express in certain ways, like you're wanting to be creative and express. There's that creative part of you that's like that playful person that wants to get in there and like just do stuff, right? And create something just for the joy of it, right? And so like when you're collaborating with yourself, I love this. I love the thought of this too, because it's all of those parts. So nothing gets ignored. It's not just the serious, or there's like this small parameter. It just keeps expanding out to all these different parts of you.
Right. Yeah. And that's self-care in the most basic sense of it.
Yes. So yeah, one of my favorite phrases right now is both and. It's remembering that it's not an either or, it's both and. It's like inviting both of them. Both are possible at the same time. Like, sometimes you don't have to make that choice. Is it this or is it that? Well, it's some of both. You would express this or I could do both. It's like it's very freeing, So I just love how it's opening up things for me.
Yes, I say the dialectical. It's holding 2 ideas at the same time that are seemingly opposite. Yeah. And it takes us away from black and white thinking, which is so predominant in our media and in our world and in everything. Yeah. So Terry, did you want to check in and say hi? You're in the car. You're muted. Oh.
Uh-oh.
Maybe she was having technical difficulties. I had some
videos.
Yeah, there you
hear
are.
Me?
All of you.
Did I get it?
Yes.
Oh my God, I am so techie. I can get to you through my phone. That's pretty amazing. And I had been at Vaughn's, and the connection to Vaughn's is only inside Vaughn's. Once you walk out the door, nada.
Oh,
Then so I crossed the street and came over to Starbucks, and within all that time you've been having a meeting. So I'm sorry to be late, but my technology is now just a phone, and I can meet with you by phone. I think it's pretty amazing.
isn't that cool? Isn't
It's
that
very
great?
cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
Yes,
is
we're getting
amazing.
more and more mobile. You know, I'm looking at you, Terry, and I haven't seen you in a while. And I saw you maybe a little while ago, but it's like you just got this like there's this lightness going on with you that I'm still like,
Oh.
yeah, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing this
Well,
ease.
you
this-
know, it's one of my values right now. Being 73 means there's a lot of me that I have been putting off, a lot of health things that I've been putting off. So this morning I went to a vein doctor. I've been having these veins in my legs taken care of. And then I went to an acupuncturist, just to sort of help, you know, make East and West meet. Speaking of
Yes.
two things going on at the same time.
Oh, damn.
And one of the things that has occurred, this is my third meeting with this acupuncturist, and I just feel like she has released some energy that just hasn't been there. And so thank you for noticing.
Oh, I'm totally seeing it. And it's like, oh, whatever you're doing, it's like it's working. Great.
Well, and I'm so proud of myself to be able to connect with this on the
Yes,
internet with my
yes,
phone.
little successes. It's like, uh-huh.
It was definitely facetious to say I'm such a techie.
Hey, it's success is success. Yeah.
That's right.
I think this is where I'm going to share I was talking about laughter yoga, and I
Oh.
learned some laughter yoga, and we can do it sitting down. I think you're standing up or sitting down, but this is when I wanted to do it to celebrate you, Terry, for all of the things. So you clap twice and you say, very good, yay.
Okay, well, that means I have to find a way to put the phone down.
You
Let's see
can
what
snap with
works.
one hand if you want. So if you want to do this with me,
Okay,
doing a little chuckle. Very good, very good. Yay! Very good. Yay! Do one more time. Very good. Yay! It's hard not to smile when you're being
Oh my goodness.
silly, and that is a very good yay for your technical achievement this morning and getting on here so easily. And you laugh.
Yeah.
You're such good medicine, you know, and that's self-care
Right.
at the end of the day, like, you know, and it doesn't take
Yeah.
much to shift. And when you connect it to your values, like caring for yourself, physical health, flourishing,
Yeah.
you know, finding beauty in the moment, whatever that value is.
Yeah. And that value is health.
Yeah.
I think without health, you don't have very much.
Oh,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about, because I was saying how earlier we were talking about mental health, because when I work with the students, they often will put physical and mental health, prioritizing physical and mental health or something around that. And what I encourage them to do or ask them, and sometimes it stays the exact same. I don't dictate anybody's values. I do an inquiry-based process to help bring up something, is how do you relate to your
Yeah.
physical health? How do you relate to your mental health? How does that look for you? How do you show up for it for yourself? Resilience could be a word that someone uses
Yeah.
that relates to physical health, mental health. It's different for each of us. Resilience could be part of another value, but what's that word or phrase that resonates with you, that when you say it, you're like, I am in alignment with my best self, basically, my highest self, my highest physical self, my highest mental self, my highest emotional self, spiritual self. It's not about being perfect. It's just being in alignment, which just gets us away from the black and white thinking that we were, right? It's about being alignment, not good or bad.
Right. And I think that I've had a struggle with that over this thing I'm doing about the veins in my legs, and that I kept struggling with, is this vanity or is this health? And thinking, no, it's health. The doctor showed me all these problems that exist because of the way the reason these veins are like they are is because they're not functioning correctly.
Right.
And to remove them is the best way to move that circulation over to veins that are working. So
So
it was for health.
It's both too, and it can be for both.
And it can be.
Oh, that's a both and.
It's the yes ands, right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
I
Very
love
good,
that.
very good. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
taking the time to, making our medical appointments is self-care.
Yeah.
Just like it is smiling for 10 minutes. And it's acknowledging that in that way. Being resilient, part of being resilient is showing up at the dentist, at the doctor, because we need to have our best self, our best healthy self. And whether that's acupuncture or another doctor, I need to do both. And Chinese medicine really, it is based on energy. So that is primary self-care. It's recognizing there are parts of us we cannot see. And how do we activate them, and where are their blockages? And that's what looking at self-care through values does. It because we have 5 to 7, it's just a different lens to look at ourselves through. Did you get a chance to look at the worksheet? I can share it too. I could show how to do it. That we did were you here last month? I think.
I don't remember.
Okay. I'm going to share it for fun.
Okay.
And then we can see how it can be useful.
Hey, while you're doing that, I just wanted to go back to the whole very good, yay.
Yeah.
Right. The thing that I was really struck by is how valuable celebration is.
Yes.
So celebration is another form of self-care. And
yeah, I think it's liberating to celebrate.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like we're not taught to do that necessarily a lot in our culture, and at least generationally, or I don't know how that works, but it's like it wasn't one of the lessons I learned. It was a whole lot of celebrating. It's like, don't, it was more like, don't do too much of that. Don't get a big head, right? Right. Keep it in control. Don't go too far, right? But it's such a joy to celebrate small things. It's such a kind acknowledgement of your growth and where you are and your courage or whatever it takes, and that, I think that really adds to the self-care piece. It's not just about me, but it's like, you know what? Gosh, I'm really proud of myself for doing that. It's like, yes, I got through that.
Yes.
Oh, that part is like really sweet.
Yeah. Celebrating it's very different. Next month, we'll be celebrating 2 years of doing these monthly Zooms. So that's a celebration.
Wow.
Yeah, for next month.
Like,
We'll
what?
Celebrating.
Yes.
How do you celebrate in your alignment with your values? Right.
Love that.
Yeah, because there's all different kinds of ways to celebrate too. All right, I'm going to share this just so you can see.
Okay.
Because one of the things I think is important about values work is taking it from abstract into practical. We do a lot in this conversation to move from like taking it from hypothetical or kind of heady into reality, into actual, even aspirational into actual. So here I will share this. Can you see that? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Remember this? So the idea here is when you know your set of core values, you can write them here pretty clearly. One of the things we do in our workshops is be able to help each person get to what their 5 to 7 core values are. There are many ways to do that. Our process that I developed goes through, it's kind of an inquiry-based process rather than a pick from the list process. So we really we check to make sure that our values are actually our own and not inherited, which can easily happen.
Oh yes, it can.
Yeah. And then we're operating from a lot of shoulds, and that does not feel good and makes it more difficult to use them as the real inner compass that they can be. And then you write your value here, and you write one act of self-care next to it that you can do on it. So there's 7 lines for each self-care, or for each value. And then you just write on there, what is that? What can I do in that way? So for me, flourish would be smile for 10 minutes a day, right? And creativity was sketch for 10 minutes a day. And integrity could be a second meditation a day. So I go through each of my values and identify, when you have a set, that's what makes having a set that you can keep going back to. You can be really creative about how to use them, and they become something you can really rely on. And the consistency allows the ability to use them as that advisory board that is useful. And then you can choose one of those actions to pick for the next 7 days or the next month for 10 minutes a day only. Obviously, if you want to do more, but it's, sustainability is one of my values. It could be gardening for 10 minutes. It could be taking a walk or a hike. Now that might be hard every day, but how can I put my feet in the grass and do kind of like earthing or grounding with bare feet in the dirt? That could be for 10 minutes. And that would be a self-care act that would be in alignment with my reverence for nature, which is sustainability for me. So it gets us out of the doing our self-care in this way, takes us out of kind of the predominant mindset of what that self-care is supposed to look a certain way, because it doesn't have to. And I think when that feeling of fulfillment that you're talking about, that feeling of celebration, comes with that harmony of all of our parts working together in a different way. And we can easily leave one out or forget one when we get into the kind of routine of what self-care looks like.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
and then you keep going. And so that the worksheet is in the chat to help
Okay.
do that. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that again, Amy. I think it's super.
Yeah, of course. Terry, what did you say? After 22 years of teaching, I tried a lot of things. I just gave in. Thank you for the alternative. Gave in to what?
The person who was in the chat before me was saying not to have the veins removed, but to try walking 7,000 steps a day and try other things first.
Yeah.
And even every day before class, a couple of other teachers and I walked all through the hills around the school we taught at, to, because we all stand up all day, and we were all sort of in unison trying to do things for our health. So there, you can have ideals, and then you have to meet at some point you have to sort of meet yourself and say, I'm gonna go for the doctor's side.
Right.
So that's what I did.
Oh yeah.
And it's easier to heal from than I imagined, if that's any consolation to anyone.
Good. Yeah. I mean, our bodies are so individualized, and how I'm always like or not always, it's a strong word. So oftentimes if there's like a 3% get this or 2% of an interaction with a drug, I'm like 3%, not always, but I have often been, I'm the 3% who had the reaction to Cipro of the weird rash, things like that, so it's my dad, who was a doctor, found that out for me.
Was he that way?
Hi.
Well, that's part of self-care too, is just knowing yourself, knowing how your body functions, knowing your limits, knowing your preferences, knowing what seems to work for you, and like following that guidance. It's like, Terry, you were willing to like say, you know what, I know people give me a lot of advice, but I just really have to follow what feels right for me and do it.
That's
Yeah.
self-care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think too, like there's oftentimes in the medical profession, they'll say, oh, it's just a minor surgery. And there's no such thing as a minor surgery. My dad, who was a doctor, used to say that to us, that a lot of times sometimes our medical profession is disconnected from actually health, I find. And I say that as a daughter of a doctor. And he was he was a rheumatologist, very caring, and tried to relieve people's pain. At the same time, it was different for each person, and there was a propensity, surgeons, that look through the lens of surgery. So keeping the mindset that if you go to a surgeon, a solution will be surgery. And they would say, oh, it's a minor surgery. And he used to counter that with, there's no such thing. Anytime you're cutting into the, and so that's an important part of self-care, is knowing how, like doing the research for ourselves, not getting overwhelmed in the rabbit hole, but being able to care for ourselves and make the best decisions for ourselves in the moment, however that looks.
Yeah.
And the values can really help with that too. Any kind of decision making, whether that's 10 minutes a day of self-care or these more major self-care decisions, right? Whether or not surgery is right for us, whether it's elective or not elective, whether it's for vanity or not.
Right. Actually, it was considered medically necessary. He had to run it through my insurance company, and they wouldn't do it unless it was medically necessary. And so it had gotten to a point where it was medically necessary.
Right. Yeah. So it's good. I'm a big believer in alternative medicine and acupuncture too. And I'm grateful when I needed Western medicine, it was there. And even my dad understood the benefits of Eastern medicine. He didn't study it. If he had lived longer, he would have. He died of cancer, but he was open to the understanding that there was another way to see things. And and I think as rheumatologists, as a profession, they have to see the body in like a whole way, a very holistic way, because a lot of times isn't a cure, there isn't a cause, there's inflammation. It's dealing with mostly with inflammation.
Yeah.
So it needs yeah, and relieving pain. So and all that falls into the same thing of, you could use that same sheet to bring up one specific subject of how could you care for yourself if you're feeling like Sheila, you said you have a lot of stuff going on right now, right? So you can say, okay, how can I look at self-care to help me with this overwhelm specifically? What do my values tell me? They're there to be able to be used like that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just doubling down on the things that I know to do that really are restorative and really super helpful, right?
Right.
Like the meditation, like writing every morning, it's like, oh my God, that's been such a beautiful release for me. And the movement and putting on a song. I mean, simple things, but this is like, oh.
Yes.
Because it is like, oh, I feel like every moment is when I continue to do that, then it's like the moments are like good. It's like, okay, on to the next thing. And I'm like flopping my way to the next thing. And it's like, oh, okay, here we are.
It is. And that's what I like about that list, is you just make it simple, right? Like it could be put on a song and dance around the kitchen, or smile while washing the dishes, or while I'm walking the dogs. I've danced while walking the dogs before. That's like, I look a little funny, but
oh, that's
I had a great time.
So much fun.
Well, they're kind of like, what are you doing? And I'm like, come on, sugar and coconut. You have names like sugar and coconut. Come
on. Give me the program.
Well, I have something that relates to that. This morning, the doctor said that his father was a surgeon and that he had 7 children. All his children became doctors, of different kinds of doctors. But he said everyone knew that he came home happy from work. When he got home, he was happy. And he said everybody wanted to be in the profession because their dad was so happy.
Wow, what a
Isn't that
wonderful
interesting?
example. Oh my goodness, yes.
That is
He was
interesting.
fulfilled. Oh wow,
Oh,
that's very cool.
I
Yeah.
thought so too. I just felt like that was one of the keys to a whole family of 7. I mean, well, no, it was 8, 7 boys and 1 girl. The last one was a girl, and she became a
Wow.
pediatrician. But you come from work happy and you feel fulfilled by your work, and you pass that on. It's one of the, the key to really be able to pass on your joy in life, really.
What a gift. What a gift. What a gift. Wow.
Yes.
Just by his example and his presence and who he was. That's beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's putting it out in the world, right? That other half of the values, the lens inward and then the lens outward.
Yeah.
Lens outward, which was just organic and it sounds like very authentic to him. You
Yeah.
you can't fake that.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
And what an impact that had on his 8 children.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Terry. That's inspiring.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Emulate the people that are having joy and happiness in their life and see what they're up to. And like, yeah, do some of that.
Yeah. And practicing self-care because we're right at noon.
Yes.
It came quickly again, as it does each month.
Oh, wow. Yes. Okay. Yes. Oh, my goodness. Deborah, thank you so much for joining us. And Terry, so glad that you made it. It's okay that you come in when you come in.
Yeah,
No.
we know that's
Yeah, it's all perfect.
the deal.
Yes.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, anyone, before we end today?
Well, I would say you just never know who you're affecting by how you present yourself in the world.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful thought. And which is why we say do it from the lens of your values, because you're making an impression. So,
You're always making an impression.
and when we know we're doing it from our values, it's at least authentic to who we really are. And
Yeah.
then we're leaving
Love
that
that.
impression.
Love
Yeah.
that. Thank
That's
you
a
for that
beautiful
reminder.
final thought.
Another
Thank you.
Well,
one.
thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank all of you.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Love this.
Hopefully we will see you next month on the 11th of November at
It'll be 11, 11, 11.
11
Yeah.
for a celebration. We're going to talk about, I think that's our topic.
Oh, celebration.
We're going to talk
I
about
love it. I love
celebrating.
it. Oh, I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Perfect. Yes.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Ciao.
Everyone.
Okay. Bye, everybody.